and welcome to ITProTV. I'm Jo Peacock, and joining me in the studio today is the absolutely amazing Vonne Smith. And I say absolutely amazing, well, because she's here for a reason, and there's a reason why we are where we are. You see, you normally recognize me, I would hope, from project management and from service management and particularly all of our governance series here at ITProTV. Well, what happened was very, very recently, we recorded the Itil 4 foundation material. And Vonne actually took the wonderful job of being my host during that particular series. And at the end of the series, Vonne said to me, do you know what, Jo? I actually want to take the exam. I want to become Itil 4 Foundation certified. And I just turned around and I said, right, well, go for it. You know all of the material. Why don't you do it? And then I decided that after after she took the test, well, I didn't so much decide as I just said to her, pretty please, would you come into a studio with me and share with us and share with you, with the world, what your study tips were for the Itil 4 Foundation series and for that particular exam. So here we are then in a studio today with the amazing Vonne Smith. How are you, Vonne?
Man, I feel so special right now.
All right then. I forget how you are. How'd you get on?
I got on just great because I passed. Yay, yay!
Yeah.
Yes, I am now ITIL 4 certified, and I'm pretty excited. ITIL 4 Foundation certified.
That's it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Which is crazy to talk about a test. Like, it was so much fun. But honestly, like, this whole journey has been pretty exciting and just kind of learning all about the different framework, or this particular framework, and how organizations run. It gives me a different insight into businesses, and it was pretty cool. And of course, she inspired me because you're such a great teacher.
Yeah, all right.
I know. So enough of this just like fluffing each other up. Why don't we go ahead and talk about our study tips, right?
Well, but I do want to say that I have to, I mean, obviously, whilst we were recording the show, and even after we'd finished recording the show, Vonne really approached me very, very rarely, probably because I'm not here, but Vonne approached me very rarely to ask for advice and guidance. And in fact, we only finished recording the series just a matter of weeks ago, and she's already taken the test and she's passed it. So I really want to get some insight from you into really what was what were the best tips that I gave you during the series? What was something that resonated with you? But what else did you do to study? Because I don't want people to think that studying is just about watching the series and then that's it. You can walk into the exam, because that's not the case. You still have to study.
Yes.
So if I got to that first question, what were the best tips that you got from the series?
Well, definitely the quite a few of them, I'll say. When you're talking about like read these definitions, memorize these definitions, because it is all about like understanding this term and the definition and the concept around what this is, and all the orange boxes that are in the actual slides. Like, pay attention to those. So I would give, like, one of the first tips for me would be, I like to print things out. I know I'm old school and everything, but this is just, I actually put them two up on a page. So this is the exact same PowerPoint presentation that you have access to in the downloadable materials that we provide. And so I highly suggest printing these out and following along with the slides. So that way, when you go to a particular concept, you're not just looking at the like service provision, there's a little box, right? But you could actually write down your own notes of like the different examples that we gave, like the car, and like the cars coming off of the truck and then they're going on the lot, and that's like how we do the release and deploy, or deploy then release. So so I like that, and I didn't, luckily I could just, I had to listen to you because I was your host. So.
She had to. She was forced.
Yeah, but it was one of those things, like, I think now, like, oh, it would have been nice if I was kind of taking notes as I was going. Because I think that would make it a little bit easier when you go back. Because I had to go back and then write back my notes from my memory, watch some of the episodes again, and then write them back down on the slide so I could kind of remember that concept better.
I always say, when I'm in a classroom, I will always say to people, you've been given the notes. and these are your notes. Do what you want with them. But when I tell you during the series to paraphrase, then that's what I want you to do. I actually want you to paraphrase what I'm saying and paraphrase those definitions and write them down. Write them down in a way that you can remember them. And if you can write them down on those notes that you've got printed out, then that's absolutely fantastic, because you're paraphrasing the definition, you're adding context to it, but you're doing it in relation to what we're talking about. It's not just a blank piece of paper that you're writing on, it's those notes.
Yes, because then I went back, and this is my study notes, and then I went back and tried to, okay, can I paraphrase this? It's kind of going back old school to how I would study in college or in high school and everything like that. And so what are the guiding principles? And then I wrote down my little, finding Santa in cold houses, kissing otters. You're like, what? Watch the series. And then I would fill them in. And then, what is value? So I can, then with the values, what does each one of those means? And I was trying to not look at my notes and trying to paraphrase it down for me to remember it with key words. That's probably another huge one that you taught. Look at the key words. In the definition for you to remember. What is it? Asset management and configuration management. I'm like, those are the same things. No, it's not.
Right.
The configuration is how it's managed. I feel like that was kind of a key word. So I was kind of picking those out, and then the assets were more about anything that can deliver the service. So I was trying to pick those words out to associate with those either practices or principles to try to solidify what it means.
You're right. I mean, asset management is about sort of the physical resources themselves, whereas configuration management is all about relationship. And the example I always give to people there when you're thinking about configuration is think about the configuration of a PC. What's the config of a PC? Well, it's what makes up that PC. And it's how everything hangs together. Yes. So how much RAM has it got? What size screen has it got? How it all fits together. And so I want you to think about that when you think about configuration. So paraphrase things. Really try and find those key words and paraphrase them as much as you can. Now, I saw something else. There's another pile of things that are actually
these are all my study guides. As you can see, I'm super old school, okay? See my notes and then the printed out slides. And these are just 200 pages.
I have taken thousands and literally thousands of people through Itil, and I can tell you now, I have had one person in all of the years I've been involved with this that has done something on a PDF that actually wanted the electronic version. Most people will write things down, so I wouldn't be ashamed about that. It's definitely not old school.
Yeah, well, it makes me memorize it. It gets it in my brain. And yes, this is my other stack.
That's your pile.
I made flashcards. Now, yes, I did actually copy and paste into a Word document because I'm fancy like that, But so and I put one here. This is the gray side, and then this is the white side, so I know which ones.
Because we can't tell that your speciality is Word, can we?
Or printing in general. Yes,
I do. Or office products.
but it really helped, and on each one of these, for example, on this design and transition, and I said that this is part of the value chain. I then on here, I know you can't see it, but I underlined those key words because I actually did copy and paste it right from the PowerPoint.
Right.
But now that's something that, talking about paraphrase, make your own flashcards.
Yeah.
Do the term, turn it over, you paraphrase in your words or with those key words what that is, and that really helped me a lot. So, and again, that's just how I like to study.
And I want you to paraphrase because something that I've noticed in the exams, and something that Vonne had said to me about her exam as well, is that for those of you that have been that have got experience in ITL 3 and maybe even in ITL 2, they were quite literal in their use of definitions in the exams. They're not anymore. And so as far as ITL 4 is concerned, you need to be able to put these definitions into context. And so your exam is probably going to be based on, contextual meanings of these particular definitions, or based on, the examiner's paraphrasing of those definitions. So it's really important that you understand.
I will say that kind of got me a little bit, because I just took this, at the time that we were recording it, I took the test last night. So it's kind of fresh in my brain, but I had started memorizing the words the definitions from the PowerPoint. And I think it might have got me a little bit because I memorized specific words and it was that word. And then I went to the test and I was like, oh, they're using slightly different words. It's the same, but it was enough difference that it kind of threw me for a minute. But that's where it comes back into read the full question.
RTFQ.
Read it over. And that's where I read it. And then I read every single answer. And I'm like, but the test is straightforward enough. Like it's slightly tricky, but it's not like really tricky. They're not trying to trick you, but the kind of way, like you just said, like how they're paraphrasing and use certain words to describe it might not be exactly how it's typed in the PowerPoint. And that's where I think I might have overstudied. I'm over-memorized.
They're going to test your ability to be able to use the information that you've been presented. They're not testing your ability to be able to remember it. They're testing your ability to use it. And apply it.
And just be able to use the context is probably the biggest one. It's not, some of those like Microsoft exams get really tricky with like these weird scenarios and everything. And that's where I would say it is straightforward. So if you know this, like it's not going to trip you up. If you understand the concepts, know the difference and know all the practices, and that's the other part with the like how much of the exam is weighted in like the practices. Like I really concentrated on those, like making sure I could differentiate the asset management and the configuration and the service continuity. And see, I've already started remembering, okay, these are the practices, but then what does each one do?
Right.
That was a big part. So I spent a lot of time in that
and of course
area.
You know, whilst we've got a few practices that we concentrate on quite heavily in the series, we actually only look at the remaining practices from a definition perspective, but you still need to understand that definition. So going on to the sample papers, because there are two sample papers that are available either through Axelos or through your downloadable material. How useful did you find the sample papers?
Huge.
Okay.
Yeah, like these were really good because and you gave me some good points.
And I was a bit mean to her on the sample papers.
She's always mean.
Yeah. Because
good reason.
I gave her the sample papers and I said, I don't want you to study. I'm not giving you the answers, and I didn't give her the answers, and I don't want you to study. I want you to go through the sample papers now with your gut reaction, because what I want you to do is experience that exam condition that you're going to come across, where you get a question that you don't know, and you get a question that you stare at for what seems like forever, and you think, I don't remember this. I don't remember covering this. What do I do? And I wanted her to be able to work it out for herself, sort of what the common sense answer would be in that particular scenario. And it's not because we haven't covered everything. It's simply because there's so much information to learn that, you know, there are things that you're going to forget. And so that's why I did that to you.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to be mean.
No, and that's what it's mean with a purpose.
Oh, okay, that makes it better then, right?
But it really did help because the first one, the sample paper that we went over in the series, like I took this one pretty much like right after we finished. So I had it was pretty fresh in my brain. And I did pretty well, but it also gave me like places where I know I needed to go back and review. Yeah. You know, because I'm like, man, I do not remember the differences between the practices because they all, no offense, they all kind of blend together sometimes. You know, all the words, I'm just like, this is all the same stuff. What's going on?
I'm not offended. Why would I be offended?
So I did pretty well on this one. The sample paper 2 that we did not go over in the series, but I took on, that was after maybe 2 or 3 weeks that I hadn't looked at the slides. I hadn't looked at it. And you're like, do it now. And I'm like, no, but I want to study first. She's like, no. And I'm like, oh.
That was really mean on that one. Yeah.
But it did kind of show things I did remember. Yeah. Okay. And all right, got to go back and review those practices. And some of
the wording in that is fairly tricky, I would say. Some of the wording you've really got to think about. And some of the wording you could actually think that, well, I can read this 2 ways. Yeah. You've written something on there. What was that?
I have on here one. I don't know if you can see this, but after I took
RTFQ.
Yes, because you told me, because when we because we went over it together, and she's like, see, and then when I look back at it, I'm like, oh, you're right. It's right there. It's right in the question. And then the other thing I have on here is keywords. Ensure.
Yeah.
That kind of relates to like a work or a practice. So work, practice, understand, think, and plan. Like you can kind of grab, and that's that context of what these words mean and how you can relate it to. Because sometimes they'll give you like a little question, and in the sample paper is like, well, one's a practice, one's a guiding principle, one's one of the dimensions, and I'm like, oh, all of them? But then when you see the word in the question, like ensure, and that's like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of leaning towards practice.
Right.
So you can kind of use that as some guidelines. I'm not saying it's going to work every single time, but it did kind of help for me to kind of break down the question and then what answer would be the most applicable.
So getting on to the exam itself, how did you find the whole process of registering and then actually sitting down and doing your exam? Was it a bit daunting, that sitting in a room?
Not too bad, honestly.
Right.
But I guess I've also been in plenty of testing booths.
Right.
So I'm used to like test day.
Yeah.
I know how that goes. But the actual the registration process was pretty streamlined. The one thing I did see like pick your time, and it gave you the dates, and I'm clicking through. I'm like, man, there's nothing here for like the next 4 months. No, you got to click on the time, and then click on the date, and then it shows you the time. The interface right there was a little. I'm like, oh. So when you see the gray bars with the dates, click on the date, and then it will activate what times are available for you on that date.
I know I've got a bit of a tip for you on that one as well.
Because that threw me off.
Because exam times change, or available exam times change on a daily basis. So what I suggest you do is when you first get your exam voucher, go and pick a date and time that you might want to take your exam. Notice I say might. But then if that's not really the time that you want to take your exam, then I would go in every single day and check to see what dates and what times have become available. You can change your exam anytime up until the day before your actual exam itself. So go in and just keep checking, and eventually you might find something that comes up that's available, that's suitable for you.
Yeah.
So you can just pick a date. Any date will do, and then go in and check on a regular basis, because people are changing their exam times literally all the time.
Yeah, and click the date, and then it shows you the time. Because I was like, I can't take it. I want to take it right now. It's fresh in my mind, So and the process was really simple. You put it in, it gives you all the stuff. You go ahead and you click it, and it gives you emails of the same thing, downloading the exam shield and making sure you test everything. I didn't have anything in the room. The proctor comes on, like, oh, hello. I'm like, oh. You don't see them.
No.
So that was like, I was expecting like a little chat window where we're going to talk to each other, but I could see the light on my camera. So I'm like, oh, they're watching me. And then they're like, all right, go ahead. And I did my stuff. Don't talk out loud. Right?
Did you get caught by that one?
No, I didn't, but you told me that. And I think Justin or somebody else had told me like, oh yeah, they came up like, stop talking, because they think that you might be like communicating
talking to somebody else. Yeah.
And then I got through it pretty quickly, which kind of scared me.
Go on. How long?
It was like 15, 20 minutes, and I was done with all the questions.
And you've never done an exam like this before, have you? Not an Itil exam.
Not an Itil, but one of those where it's just question, answer.
But you've never done an IT exam like this before.
No.
And so that's a good measurement for those of you that are new into IT. I mean, it took you about 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to be honest with you, right? And I'm going to beat her up in a second when we finish filming, because...
Oh, I'm used to it.
If it takes you about 20 minutes and you click on submit after 20 minutes and you've never worked in an IT environment before, you probably haven't read all of the questions properly.
And I did go back because I was like,
right.
But I did feel, as I was going through it, I'm like, okay, I feel pretty confident on most of this. Of course, there's ones where I'm just like, I don't remember that one, but you flag it, you know? And so if I answered it, but I was doubtful, I was like, I'm pretty sure I still flagged that one, because this is for me how I take, I don't know it or I'm doubtful. So I flag it.
Yeah.
The ones I'm like, no, I'm pretty confident I know that. I don't flag that one.
Right.
And then I go back. And so when I'm done, I look at that. I'm like, how many do I have flagged? I go back and look at those first.
Yeah.
And then, okay. And I did change my answer on
Right.
a couple of them because it was like, oh, wait, I did read it wrong. Okay, let me go back and okay, so I changed that. And then once I was done, I went back to the whole thing and I kind of made like a mental note of like, I think I got enough of these right. You know, like I'm pretty confident that okay, so yeah, there was a couple that I was not too sure of, but this is where test taking, scenario comes in. It's like, no, I have enough to pass.
Vonne, what's utility?
Oh, that just got me. Talk about memorizing words the wrong way, okay? Because I memorize utility, functionality, right? So function, it's how it works, right? Then they put the fit for use. It's right there on the slide, but I memorized the wrong word. Like I memorized functionality. I saw use how you use it, how it functions. Oh, that's utility.
What did I say? I said up. Yeah? Utility, purpose, up. Warranty is fit for use.
Listen to
That's
Jo.
That's why I have to.
Yeah. And again, I got too crazy memorizing. I started memorizing too much.
Right.
And so, and it's right there on the slide. I got too focused on things, but
overall, I mean, all of the techniques that you used, the flashcards and writing things down, printing off the slides, that definitely worked for you. And would you recommend that for everybody else?
Yes, I do. I mean, but I'm also a very tactile person, and that's how it gets into my brain. And then I think having that while you go through, I think is huge because, like you said, we do the scenarios or we talk about the examples because those examples are the ones that kind of stay in your head of how this all ties together. And do the whole series. I would say, like, take your notes, watch the entire series before you start studying.
Right.
Because I've heard some people, like actually in our office, like, oh, we're just going to do like the first 8 episodes and then we're going to do a study group. I'm like, I would not suggest that. I personally, you should go through the whole thing because the end of the series answered a lot of my kind of doubts or like, I don't really get it in the beginning. I feel like the series really solidified everything. Don't do it in chunks.
When we touch on the practices and as we get in deeper into the practices, that's when you start finding things coming together. That's when you start sort of, joining the dots. Definitely. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm going to say thank you to Vonne because Vonne was my guinea pig. But, Vonne volunteered for this. I do want to say this, but she did absolutely amazing in her test. And I am really grateful to her as well for actually just being here and helping you out with some study tips because it's one thing to hear it from me and I've been immersed in this for way too long over 20 years I've been immersed in this whereas Vonne is completely new to this
brand new,
so this is something that I really thought would help you out with your study. But what I am going to challenge you to do now is, watch our series because you'll find out that not only do we have a lot of fun in our series, but actually Itil itself can be fun as well. And you know what? You'll feel such a sense of fulfillment when you've actually passed your Itil 4 test. I mean,
feeling pretty good today.
Exactly. So I'm going to challenge you. Join us in our Itil 4 Foundation series. But for now, I've been Jo Peacock.
And I'm Vonne Smith.
And we'll see you in the series.